The average American home is louder, more cluttered, and more visually chaotic than any other home in the developed world. We spend thousands on storage solutions, bigger houses, and organizational systems. Yet 54% of us still feel overwhelmed by our own living spaces. A survey from the American Psychological Association found that a majority of adults report that clutter and disorganization are a significant source of stress in their lives. Meanwhile, in Japan, where homes are often a fraction of the size, residents report some of the lowest home-related stress levels on the planet. This isn't about minimalism as a trendy aesthetic. It's about a completely different relationship with the threshold, the object, the light, and the silence that begins the moment you walk through the door. Today, I'm counting down 10 Japanese rules. Some of these are so simple, they'll shock you. Others are so genius, you'll wonder why no one ever told you. By the end, your idea of a peaceful home will be completely rewritten. Number 10. The genkan is a sacred boundary, not a shoe pile. We treat the entryway as a drop zone. Keys hurled onto a table, mail tossed in a heap, wet shoes kicked off in a frantic scramble to get inside. The result is visual screaming the second you walk in. In Japan, the genkan isn't just a tiled pit where you leave your shoes. It's a psychological airlock. This is where the dirty, chaotic energy of the outside world is physically lowered and stepped out of. Your outdoor shoes are not just carriers of dirt. They carry the stress of your commute, the tension of the meeting, the aggression of the traffic. When I first moved into a traditional apartment in Kyoto, my landlord, Mrs. Akiyama, reprimanded me on day 2. She didn't yell. She just pointed silently at my shoes pointing haphazardly toward the door. She turned them around for me. By facing the shoes outward toward the street, you are subconsciously preparing to leave. This creates low-grade anxiety. A Japanese home turns the shoes inward, ready for you to slip into them when you depart. But the deeper rule is restraint. Too much visual information at the entrance detracts from a calm atmosphere. No stacks of newspapers, no overflowing coat rack. The genkan should look like a quiet gallery, not a storage closet. Let me take you deeper into the floor itself. A traditional genkan is a physical step-up, a literal change in altitude between the street and the home. The lower level is cool, often stone or tile, slightly gritty underfoot, and this is where the dirt belongs. The upper level is warm, smooth wooden flooring, polished by decades of bare feet. It's a tactile boundary. You step up, and your body knows it has crossed into a new world. Even if you live in a Western apartment with a flat floor, you can mark that boundary. In my first American attempt, I used a small woven jute mat just inside the door. Not for decoration, not a welcome mat that says "Home Sweet Home" in cursive. Just a natural, unadorned rectangle about the size of a shoe tray. Friends would come over and immediately understand, almost instinctively, that shoes came off there. You can take this further. I placed a low wooden bench next to the door, sturdy enough to sit on while unlacing boots. The act of sitting down to remove your shoes, rather than hopping on one foot while clutching a doorframe, is a deceleration ritual. It forces a pause. You cannot rush and sit at the same time. The bench, the mat, the shoe rack pointing inward. These are your genkan elements, and together they whisper, "Slow down," to your nervous system. I remember the crisp autumn evening when Mrs. Akiyama stood in the doorway and taught me this with no words. She was wearing a hand-dyed indigo apron, and she had been cooking something with dashi and soy. The whole house smelled warm and savory. I barged in, kicked off my shoes so they skidded sideways, and immediately strode toward the kitchen to ask about the meal. She didn't block me. She simply glided to the genkan, bent down, picked up my shoes one by one, and turned them neatly so the heels rested against the step and the toes pointed outward, ready for the next departure. Then she looked at me. Not angry. Just waiting, I felt a deep embarrassment. Not because I'd broken a rule, but because I'd brought chaos where there was meant to be order. From that moment, I started seeing the genkan as a small temple gate. In Shinto tradition, you bow slightly before passing through a torii gate, acknowledging a shift in sacredness. The genkan is your domestic torii. You don't have to bow, but you should pay attention. Try it. Tonight when you come home, do not rush the doorway. Stop, take a breath. These 30 seconds are a threshold ritual that signals to your nervous system that the performance is over. Remove your outdoor shoes deliberately. Place them neatly, pointing them inward. If you have a coat, hang it immediately. Look at the surface nearest your door. Is it screaming at you? Clear it. Leave nothing but a single beautiful object, perhaps a stone or a small plant. You are building a dam against the flood of the world. The genkan is not a place to dump your life. It's a place to leave the world behind. Number 9. Soft, slow darkness over harsh blue light. Americans are addicted to 5,000 Kelvin daylight bulbs. We blast ourselves with blue light until the second we drop dead into bed, and then we wonder why our brains are on fire. I used to have a kitchen with blinding overhead. That made the granite sparkle like a surgical theater. It felt hygienic, but my cortisol levels wouldn't drop. In Japanese homes, the lighting dims to almost nothing as night falls. We are talking floor lamps, pools of warm 2700 Kelvin light, lanterns. The Japanese have a concept of living by soft, natural light. It's called inemuri for the commute, but it's the shadow play of the home interior that counts. This isn't just about coziness, it's biology. A study from the University of Tsukuba demonstrated that exposure to dim, warm light in the evening significantly suppressed sympathetic nerve activity, the fight or flight response, compared to bright white light. When the sun goes down, your home should be a cave. Not a dark cave that makes you depressed, but a softly illuminated one. I switched all my living room bulbs to dimmable amber LEDs, and I placed a small salt lamp in the hallway. The transformation was visceral. My shoulders dropped. The home stopped feeling like a 24/7 office and started feeling like a shelter. Let me describe the lighting in a Japanese home at 7 in the evening, because it changed my entire understanding of what a living room should feel like. I was visiting a friend in a narrow Machiya townhouse in Kyoto. The sun had set, and outside the street was inky black, no streetlights to bleach the sky. He opened the wooden door, and I stepped from the cool night into this glowing, honey-colored cavern. There was no ceiling light. Instead, 3 small paper floor lamps, anden, cast circles of pale gold across the tatami. One was near a low wooden table, illuminating a chipped ceramic teacup and a half-eaten persimmon. Another was tucked in a corner, backlighting a single scroll of calligraphy. The third was in the corridor, so faint it was more suggestion than illumination. The shadows themselves felt plush, like velvet. The corners of the room were utterly invisible, and that wasn't a flaw. It was the point. My eyes stopped darting, my mind stopped scanning. We sat in silence for a while, and I realized I hadn't felt that deeply relaxed in years. I asked him why he didn't just install a bright overhead light for when he needed to read or clean. He looked genuinely puzzled. "Why would I want to see everything at once?" he asked. "Seeing everything is for the day. At night we rest from seeing." I came home and studied the science more carefully. Our retinas contain intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells that are exquisitely sensitive to blue wavelengths. When they detect that high color temperature light, they signal the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus that it's midday. Melatonin production gets slammed down to 0, cortisol stays elevated. The body remains in alert, hunter-gatherer mode. Even if you're sitting on a couch, your biology thinks you're scanning the savannah for lions. In contrast, the dim, warm amber light of a setting sun or a candle, or a low-wattage incandescent bulb, allows melatonin to rise. It's the physiological equivalent of being deep in a forest at dusk, safe in a thicket. The University of Tsukuba study I mentioned took this further. They measured sympathetic nerve activity directly via microneurography and found that just shifting the light from bright white to dim warm in the evening caused a measurable drop in the body's stress output within minutes. This is not woo-woo. This is hard physiology. Now, a quick honest caution. I am not telling you to stumble around in total darkness and break a toe. If you have vision issues or small children or you're older, you need to balance ambience with safety. Don't turn your home into a tripping hazard. The Japanese approach is not zero light, it's graduated light. They often use tiny sensor night lights that emit a warm amber glow near steps and bathroom doors. Nothing blue, nothing sharp. So you can navigate without crashing into things, but the overall environment remains low and shadow-drenched. I placed a few of these motion-activated warm plug-in lights along my hallway baseboards, and they cost about $10 each. They click on softly as you walk, just enough to see the edge of a rug. That's your safety net, but avoid the temptation to light the whole room so you never have to squint. A little darkness is where relaxation grows. My friend, go to your light switches right now. If you have dimmers, crank them down to half. If you don't, go buy a cheap table lamp with a linen shade tonight. Stop using the big light. Let your eyes adjust. The darkness of the corners of the room is not a failure of lighting. It's an essential ingredient of rest. This is why Japanese restaurants feel so sacred. It's the absence of that aggressive glare. Your home should have pools of light, not floods. Pools invite you in, floods wash you away. Number 8, Nagara Suji. Clean as you cook, wipe as you leave. Here is the most shamefully simple rule of Japanese domestic life that Westerners refuse to believe works. It translates loosely to clean while you do. We treat cleaning as a distinct, miserable event. We destroy the kitchen cooking a meal, leaving a tsunami of flour and dirty pans. Eat like kings, and then stare at the destruction for 3 hours before angrily scrubbing it. This creates visual guilt. That guilt is a carcinogen for peace. Nagara Suji means that the act of cleaning is inseparable from the act of living. You do not leave the counter wet. You do not leave the sink full overnight. The sink rule in many Japanese homes dictates that the sink should not be left full overnight because a clear sink prevents morning resistance. When I interviewed a homemaker in Osaka, she told me she cleans the stovetop while the onions are sweating. She wipes the bathroom mirror after she brushes her teeth. She doesn't wait. The cleaning is invisible because it happens in the micro moments. This interview happened on a humid Tuesday afternoon in a small kitchen near Tsuruhashi Market. Her name was Yuki, and she had 2 young children, yet her home looked like a showroom. I expected her to spend hours each day scrubbing. Instead, she moved with the seamless efficiency of a chef. As she talked, she was slicing spring onions, and I noticed that between each ingredient she would wipe the cutting board with a damp cloth, just a quick pass, and push the trimmings into a small bowl right at the edge of the counter. She never stopped talking, never looked flustered. When she poured oil into a pan, she used that 30-second heating window to rinse the cutting board and sponge the counter around the stove. The spatula she'd used to flip the onions went directly into the dishwasher, but not before she wiped the handle with her cloth. Her movements were rhythmic, almost musical. I asked her when she did the real cleaning. She paused and tilted her head. "This is the real cleaning," she said. "The big cleanup only happens if you ignore the small ones." That sentence hit me like a wooden mallet. The Western approach is to compartmentalize mess. We allow it to accumulate because we've scheduled cleaning time for Saturday morning from 10 to 12. But for 6 days, we live in escalating filth, and the guilt of that filth gnaws at us. Every time you walk past the messy counter, your brain registers a micro-failure. Dozens of these per day. It's death by 1,000 visual cuts. Nagara Suji eliminates the need for a scheduled cleaning block because the house never gets dirty enough to need one. It's like brushing your teeth after every meal instead of waiting for a monthly dental scraping. The baseline of order never dips. I tried this for a week and felt ridiculous. I'd scroll my phone while waiting for water to boil and I'd catch myself thinking, I could be wiping the fridge handle right now. So I did. The first few days were effortful. By day 4, my brain had rewired. I found myself automatically putting the salt away after seasoning the soup, automatically wiping the stovetop splatter before I even tasted the broth. The kitchen stayed immaculate, but I spent no more time cleaning overall. I just redistributed the effort into tiny, frictionless blips throughout the day. This principle extends beyond the kitchen. In the bathroom, I now keep a squeegee in the shower and a microfiber cloth on a hook. After I shower, while the water is still warm on the tiles, I take 30 seconds and wipe down the glass and the fixtures. No soap scum ever forms. No weekend deep scrub. The mirror gets a wipe while I'm waiting for my moisturizer to sink in. The toilet bowl gets a quick brush before I leave the room. Nagara Suji is a muscle you build. Start with one room. The kitchen is the most impactful because it's the heart of chaos. Tonight, while your pasta water comes to a boil, don't check your phone. Wipe down the counter. Put away the spice jars. That is the moment. That is peace being born. A small, honest caution. The danger here is falling into an obsessive, joyless rigidity where you can't rest because there's always a speck somewhere. I know this because I went too far. For a few weeks, I became a cleaning robot, interrupting conversations to wipe coasters. My partner told me I was making the house feel tense, so I learned to modulate. Nagara Suji is a soft practice, not a military drill. The goal is visual calm, not sterility. A little dust is fine. A lived-in home is not a failed home. The key is preventing that pileup that shouts at you, not eliminating every atom of disorder. Find the rhythm that lets you exhale. Number 7. Designated homes, not piles. We accumulate paper. Receipts, menus, mail, keys, the random screw you found on the floor. Because we don't know where these things belong, they drift to flat surfaces. The coffee table becomes a graveyard of indecision. Japanese peacekeeping is militant about assigning a specific home for every object. Not a general area, not a junk drawer, a precise designated spot. In a traditional Japanese kitchen, every utensil has a slot, every container a lid. This reduces decision fatigue. Your brain doesn't have to negotiate with a pile of mail. If the mail has a home, a specific tray, you put it there. The act becomes a reflex, not a deliberation. I watched a Japanese mother once open a drawer in her kitchen, and it stopped me mid-sentence. It was a shallow bamboo drawer, and inside were 6 small wooden boxes, each about the size of a paperback book. One held rubber bands, one held twist ties, one held bag clips. They were not mixed. There was no frantic rummaging. She reached for a twist tie without even looking, because her hand knew exactly where it lived. That's the level of precision I'm talking about. But you don't need a custom bamboo drawer system. You need a moment of intentional assignment. Every object that enters your home should pass through a simple question. Where do you live? If you can't answer immediately, that object will inevitably become a nomad, drifting from the dining table to the couch to the floor, silently eroding your sense of order. The first thing I did after that realization was tackle my entryway. I installed a small floating shelf above the shoe bench. On it, I placed a handcrafted ceramic bowl with a rough, unglazed interior. That bowl became the home for my keys, wallet, and sunglasses. Not a hook, not a tray that slides around. A heavy, immovable bowl with a satisfying weight. When I come home, the ritual is now automatic. Shoes off, turn them inward, keys in the bowl. The sound of metal on pottery is a tiny bell that rings the end of the external day. My sunglasses live there too. My wallet. If an item isn't in the bowl, I know instantly it's out of place. My brain no longer wastes a single calorie asking, where did I leave my keys? The home is the bowl. The bowl is the home. Peace is predictability. The same logic applies to paperwork. In Japan, homes often have a designated shallow tray or a small tansu drawer just for incoming mail. Not a stack that avalanches. A single, finite container that holds exactly 1 week's worth of envelopes. When it's full, you process it. That limit prevents the horror of the exploding mail mountain. I carved out a drawer in my kitchen and placed a wooden letter sorter inside. 2 compartments, to do and to file. I process the to-do compartment every Sunday evening. It takes 7 minutes. The dread is gone because the pile never grows beyond the physical boundary of that sorter. Your brain loves boundaries. Boundaries are safety. When clutter has no boundary, it feels infinite and defeating. A box, a tray, a bowl, a drawer, these are containers of containment. They say to your subconscious, this is all there is to handle. You can handle this. Beyond utility items. There's a subtle emotional component here that I learned from a Shinto priest I met in Ise. He told me that every object has a spirit, a tama, and when you treat it with care, you honor that spirit. I'm not an animist, but the psychological effect is real. When you have a beautiful knife, and you clean it, dry it, and place it back in its precise slot in the block, you are performing a tiny act of gratitude. That knife helped you cook. Now you let it rest in its designated place. The aggressive energy of where the heck do I put this is replaced by a quiet, intentional ritual. My scissors, which used to vanish into desk drawers, now live in a simple leather cup on my desk, blades down. Every time I use them, I return them. Every time I see them, I feel a flicker of satisfaction. Multiply that flicker across 100 objects, and your home stops feeling like a chaotic battlefield and starts feeling like a curated sanctuary. So tonight, walk through one room and find 5 objects that don't know where they live. Give each one a permanent address. Write it down if you need to. Tape a label. In a week, that room will feel radically different. Number 6. The 80% capacity rule. The greatest lie ever sold to American homeowners is that you need to fill your space. We buy shelves and immediately cram them. We buy a massive walk-in closet and stuff it until the hangers can't move. We view empty space as wasted space. This is a catastrophic failure of psychology. The 80% capacity rule is a traditional Japanese principle of not filling drawers, closets, or counters completely. You leave a 20% void. This isn't about being a minimalist with 3 shirts. You can have possessions, but the container that holds them must breathe. When a drawer is jammed, opening it is a stressful event. When a closet is packed, retrieving a coat requires a physical struggle. Leaving empty space absorbs daily variations. It allows you to see what you own. It's visual oxygen. The Japanese have a term for this dynamic negative space, this emptiness that isn't empty but full of potential. It's called ma. Ma is the pause between notes in a piece of music, the white space around a character in calligraphy, the wide-open area in the center of a temple garden where no rock is placed. Ma is not nothing. Ma is the silent partner that makes the something sing. When I first moved into my Japanese apartment, I had a bookcase that was overflowing with books, stacked horizontally on top of vertical rows, double-layered so you couldn't see the back. I thought it looked intellectual. Actually, it looked like a fire hazard. A Japanese friend came over, stared at it for a long moment, and then said quietly, "Your books are suffocating." He was right. There was no air, no visual pause. My eye couldn't rest anywhere. I removed every 10th book. about 20% of the total. I didn't get rid of them. I just redistributed some to another room and donated others. But on that bookcase, suddenly there were gaps, small intervals of dark wood between clusters of spines. The whole room exhaled. I could actually see the titles of the books that remained. They became individuals rather than a blurry mass. The space around them acted as a frame, giving each book importance. The same principle hit me with my kitchen cabinets. I had mugs crammed so tightly that extracting one risked an avalanche. I removed 3 mugs, leaving a comfortable gap between the remaining ones. Now I can grab a mug without playing Jenga. The cabinet looks clean. I feel calm opening it. That's the power of the void. The 80% rule also applies to horizontal surfaces. In a Western kitchen, the counters tend to accrue a permanent population of appliances. The toaster, the coffee maker, the air fryer, the stand mixer, the blender, the knife block, the utensil crock. Every square inch gets colonized. A Japanese kitchen, even a modern one, typically keeps counters mostly clear. Appliances are stored in cabinets and pulled out when needed. The clear counter creates a perception of spaciousness that actually alters how you feel in the room. It's the same square footage, but your brain reads it as larger and more peaceful. I removed my toaster and coffee maker from the counter and stored them in an appliance garage, pulling them out only for breakfast. The counter became a vast, open plain of wood grain. I felt an immediate lift. The same with the bathroom vanity. I put all my daily toiletries into a small drawer instead of standing them up on the counter. I left out only a single soap dispenser. Now, when I walk into the bathroom, my eye isn't assaulted by a battalion of lotion bottles. It's a quiet, hotel-like serenity. The 20% you leave empty isn't a sacrifice. It's the most important space in the room. It's where your mind can go to rest. When every inch is filled, your mind has no room to wander. It feels compressed, squeezed. Open space invites open thought, so try this today. Open your most chaotic drawer or closet. Remove things until you can see the back or sides of the container, until you can slide your hand in without resistance. Then look at it, breathe, that's the piece you've been missing. Number 5. The soft shift. Changing into home clothes. Have you ever sat on your couch in jeans and a belt and felt genuinely relaxed? No, you haven't. Your body is still in armor. The Japanese ritual of changing from outdoor clothes into soft, home clothes the moment you step inside is not just about cleanliness. It's a sensory signal of absolute surrender. I am not talking about throwing on a ratty stained t-shirt. I'm talking about specific, clean, soft clothing reserved only for the interior. In Japan, these are typically soft cotton, linens, or kimonos. The act of undoing the buttons of a stiff work shirt and pulling on something loose and breathable is a transition ceremony. Let me paint you the picture of my own evening transformation. I used to come home, kick off my shoes, and collapse onto the sofa in whatever I'd been wearing all day. Dress pants a button-down, maybe a blazer still on. I'd tell myself I was relaxing, but my body knew the truth. The waistband was still cinched. The collar was still stiff against my neck. The tag on the back of the shirt still scratched. My skin was receiving constant low-level signals saying, "You are in public. Maintain posture. Be alert." I stayed in this half-state of tension for hours, then slept poorly. Then I visited a family in Kanazawa. And the father came home from his salaryman job and disappeared into the bedroom for 5 minutes. He emerged transformed. He was wearing a soft navy jinbei, a 2-piece garment of thin cotton that draped like water. The top was cross-collared and tied loosely at the side. The shorts were wide and stopped just above the knee. His whole demeanor had changed. His shoulders had dropped at least 2 inches. His voice was quieter. He seemed like a different man. I asked him about it and he said simply, When I change my clothes, I change my mind. The work mind cannot rest in work clothes. That night, I went to a local shop and bought my own jinbei. I felt self-conscious at first. I'm not Japanese, and the garment had an elegance I didn't feel I'd earned. But I put it on after a long day of sightseeing, and something remarkable happened. The fabric was so soft it felt like well-worn bedsheets. The cut was so generous I could sit cross-legged without any binding. There were no buttons to dig in, no zippers to catch, no rigid seams. I was cocooned in breathable cotton. Within minutes, my heart rate slowed. I was more present in conversation. I realized that my usual relaxation clothes, an old t-shirt with a stretched-out neck and sweatpants with a broken drawstring, didn't signal peace. They signaled laziness and disrepair. The jinbei, by contrast, was intentional. It was a uniform of rest. There's a difference between clothes that represent giving up and clothes that represent settling in. The Japanese choose the latter. The science aligns with this. Our skin is laced with mechanoreceptors that detect pressure, texture, and temperature. When those receptors are stimulated by scratchy, restrictive fabrics, they send signals to the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Even if you're consciously ignoring the discomfort, your subconscious is registering a threat. Soft, loose, smooth fabrics stimulate the paraventricular nucleus in a way that reduces cortisol and promotes parasympathetic activation. In plain English, soft clothes tell your brain you are safe. Hard clothes tell it to stay vigilant. This is why so many people sleep naked or in incredibly soft pajamas. It's not just preference, it's biology. I now have a home uniform, a pair of soft linen pants, and a massive organic cotton shirt. It's hideous by fashion standards, but it works. The second I put it on, my mind knows that doing time is over and being time has begun. If you work from home, this is triply important. You still need a commute outfit and a home outfit, even if your commute is 10 feet. The ritual of changing clothes creates a distinct boundary between work and home life, which prevents that soul-crushing blur where you feel like you're always at the office. A practical tip and a small caution. You do not need to buy a Japanese jinbei. Any set of clean, soft, dedicated home clothes will do. The key is that they are for home only. Never wear your home clothes to the grocery store. Reserve them. This maintains the psychological boundary. The caution is this: don't use comfortable clothes as an excuse to stay in pajamas all day. Pajamas are for sleeping. Home clothes are for living while awake. The distinction matters because your brain associates pajamas with unconsciousness and laziness. Home clothes, in contrast, signal relaxed alertness. They say, I am at rest, but I am present. Find that distinction, and you will find a deeper well of peace. Number 4. Water as the great purifier. It's the deep winter, and you've just finished a stressful day. In the U.S., we might just scroll on our phones until we pass out or pour a glass of wine. But the Japanese ofuro, the evening bath ritual, is not about getting clean. Cleaning happens outside the tub rapidly, with soap and a handheld shower. You are scrubbed raw before you even touch the water. The tub is only for soaking. It is a silent, sensory tank. The heat, typically around 104 degrees Fahrenheit, forces a massive redistribution of blood flow. Your heart pumps harder, your blood vessels dilate, and your muscles are forced to relax. My first ofuro experience was in a mountain ryokan near Hakone. I was travel-weary, dusty, and cold to the bone. The innkeeper, an elderly woman with a spine like a bamboo stalk, showed me the bathing room. It was a small wooden chamber with a high window open to the night air. Steam curled in the moonlight. She handed me a tiny stool, a wooden bucket, and a washcloth, and then mimed scrubbing. I understood. Clean first. I spent 10 minutes soaping and rinsing my entire body with a handheld shower, sitting on that stool until I felt raw and pink. Only then did she gesture to the deep wooden tub, filled with water that smelled faintly of hinoki cypress. I stepped in. The heat was shocking, a full-body gasp. For a moment I thought I couldn't bear it. But then that strange physiological surrender. My blood vessels dilated. My heart shifted into a lower gear. The heat wrapped around my spine like a huge, gentle hand. I sank in up to my chin and the world went quiet. There was no rush, no timer. Just the soft lap of water and the distant rustle of bamboo outside. I stayed in that tub for what felt like an hour, and when I finally emerged, I was in a state of profound, oceanic calm. I slept that night like a stone. This is Japanese peacemaking at its most visceral. You cannot look at your phone in a scalding hot bath. The steam would destroy it. You are trapped in a quiet, warm void with nothing but your thoughts. A study published in the journal Heart found that daily hot bath bathing was correlated with a massive reduction in cardiovascular disease risk. The mechanism is thought to be improved vascular function and reduce systemic inflammation. But the peace comes from the ritualized reset. The water washes the day away not metaphorically, but literally. You emerge with your core temperature elevated, and as it slowly drops while you lay out your futon, you fall into the deepest sleep of your life. The temperature drop mimics the body's natural pre-sleep cooling, so it signals to the pineal gland to release melatonin. It's a biological hack disguised as a luxury. Now an honest caution, this is important. Immersion in hot water, especially at temperatures above 104 degrees Fahrenheit, places a significant load on the cardiovascular system. If you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, heart disease, or are pregnant, please consult a doctor before taking prolonged hot baths. Even healthy people can feel dizzy or lightheaded when standing up after a bath because the peripheral vasodilation can cause a sudden drop in blood pressure. In Japan, they mitigate this by never heating the bath water above 105 degrees and by limiting soak time to around 15 minutes. They also drink a glass of cool water before and after to stay hydrated. I've learned to do the same. I set a timer, 15 minutes of silent soaking, then I stand up very slowly, using the wall for support. The goal is not to torture your body, but to coax it into deep relaxation. Don't push it. The heat should be challenging but not painful. You should be able to breathe deeply and comfortably. If you feel your heart racing or you feel nauseous, get out immediately, cool down and drink water. Safety is non-negotiable. I installed a simple soaking tub in my apartment. Not a full afuro, but a deep clawfoot tub that allows me to submerge my shoulders. I do this 3 times a week. The silence of the water, the smell of a few drops of hinoki essential oil, the warmth that seeps into my bones. It's a sensory deprivation tank for the chronically overstimulated. Even if you only have a shower, you can approximate the ritual. Run a hot foot bath in a basin while you sit on the edge of the tub. Immerse your feet and focus on the heat spreading upward. It's not the same, but it begins the process. The point is to use water not as a tool for hurried hygiene, but as a medium for mental release. The water carries away what no amount of thinking can solve. Number 3. Nature as a roommate, not a decoration. A modern Western living room features a massive black screen, plastic gadgets, and maybe a fake plant in the corner that is gathering dust. We have severed our connection to nature inside the home. Japanese design sees nature and architecture not as separate things, but as a woven fabric. The Shibui aesthetic draws from natural materials like wood, stone, clay, linen, and paper. These materials are not just visually soft. They carry textures that invite touch. A polished granite countertop is loud and reflective and cold. A smooth, oiled wooden table ages, warms, and absorbs the light. Think about the last time you touched a piece of cold, smooth plastic versus a piece of rough, raw linen or a bowl of unglazed clay. The plastic feels dead. It's uniform, sterile, and bears no mark of the maker. The linen has slubs, tiny irregularities where the thread thickens. The clay bowl has a slight ridge from the potter's thumb. These imperfections are not flaws, they are evidence of life. The Japanese term shibui describes a subtle, unobtrusive beauty that deepens over time. It's the beauty of an iron kettle that rusts in a particular pattern, of a wooden floor that darkens where feet have walked, of a paper screen that yellows gracefully. Shibui is the opposite of the shiny, the loud, the brand new. It's beauty that whispers rather than shouts. When your home is filled with shibui materials, you are surrounded by textures that have a story. Your nervous system responds to these textures with a sense of groundedness. You feel held by the natural world, even indoors. I learned this lesson not from a book but from a single camellia branch. I was sitting in the living room of my friend Kenji in Tokyo. The room was starkly simple. Tatami floors, shoji screens, a low wooden table and one alcove, the tokonoma, which held a hanging scroll and a rough ceramic vase. In the vase was a single red camellia branch. That's it. Kenji had spent, as I later watched, an entire 45 minutes arranging this branch. He trimmed off several leaves. He rotated the stem inch by inch. He stepped back, squinted, advanced, and adjusted the angle by what seemed like a millimeter. He was an architect, a man of precise geometry, but this was not geometry. This was listening. He was letting the branch tell him how it wanted to be displayed. At one point, he removed a leaf that I thought looked perfect, but he said it was too symmetrical, that it broke the balance of negative space. When he finally stopped, the branch looked like a living painting. The slight droop of the flower, the one twisted twig that jutted left, the empty space around it, all of it breathed. That branch changed the feeling of the entire room. It brought the outside in, not as a decoration but as a presence. I have never looked at a vase of supermarket tulips the same way. You can change this today for $0. The Japanese practice of bringing a small piece of nature indoors is about singular focus. Not a stalk of flowers, but one branch. One twig with a bud. One leaf, placed with severe intention. I now keep a jar of river stones on my desk. Each one is a different shade of gray and green, worn smooth by 1,000 years of current. I found them in a stream in northern Kyoto. I pick one up when I'm thinking, and its cool weight grounds me. The stones are nature's fingertips, reminding me that time is slow and deep. In autumn, I'll place a single branch of red maple in a tall vase in the corner. In winter, a twisted piece of driftwood that looks like a frozen bolt of lightning. These are not clutter, they are anchors. Add wooden cutting boards leaning against the backsplash. Use slate coasters. Expose the grain of the wood. Ban plastic where you can. The more textures that once lived, the quieter the home becomes. Even one small change, like replacing a plastic laundry basket with a woven bamboo one, shifts the sensory input from industrial to organic. Your hands feel the difference. Your eyes register the difference. Your soul registers the difference. Number 2. Silence is an object, not the absence of noise. Americans are terrified of silence. We plug the gaps with podcasts, music, or white noise machines. The Japanese home takes noise seriously. It treats silence as an actual physical substance that fills the room. This is deeply connected to the architectural use of shoji screens and tatami mats. Shoji paper diffuses light. It also diffuses sound. Tatami reads softened footsteps. The entire space encourages a softer pace and quieter steps. I had a Western friend staying with me in Japan who was a heavy walker. He stomped across the tatami. It felt violent, not because he was heavy, but because the room was tuned for softness. Let me describe the sound of a traditional Japanese home in the evening. Because once you hear it, you cannot unhear the noise of your own life. The shoji screens are paper, translucent, with a delicate wooden lattice. When you slide them open or closed, they make a soft, sandy whisper, not a click or a bang. The tatami mats underfoot are woven igusa grass, firm but slightly yielding. They absorb the impact of a footstep, so even a brisk walk sounds more like a soft thud than a clack. The wooden posts of the house are joined without nails, so they don't creak with thermal expansion like a Western frame house. There is no HVAC system roaring through vents. The quiet is so deep you can hear the faint ticking of the bamboo fence outside or the distant ring of a temple bell carried on the wind. This silence is not emptiness. It has texture. It's a presence that wraps around you. In that silence, your own breathing becomes audible, not in a labored way, but as a gentle rhythm that reminds you that you are alive, and that's enough. I learned to move softly from an old tea master I met in Uji. He invited me to a tea ceremony, and before we entered the tiny tea hut, he instructed me to walk on the stepping stones with my whole foot, not just my heel or toe. "Feel the stone," he said, "don't strike it." I watched him glide across the garden in his tabi socks, each step a deliberate placement, no rustle, no thud. Inside the tea room, even the sound of pouring water from the iron kettle was part of the ritual. A slow, controlled stream that trickled into the bowl like a miniature waterfall. Every movement was hushed, not out of repression but out of reverence. The room itself demanded it. The architecture was not built for loudness. It was built for intimacy. I returned to my own home in the West and was horrified by my own noise. I slammed cabinets, clattered dishes, and pounded down the hallway. I had been treating my home like a backstage utility area, not a sanctuary. I made a conscious decision to become silent-footed. I started walking barefoot or in soft slippers. I checked my doorknobs and cabinet hinges and applied a little felt padding where they banged. I learned to close a door by turning the knob fully rather than letting it latch with a spring-loaded snap. These tiny adjustments accumulated into a profound change. The house felt calmer, but more than that, I felt calmer. My gestures slowed. My breath deepened. Slowing down movements indoors contributes to a calmer feeling. If you walk softly, you handle objects softly. If you close a cabinet softly, you don't wake the baby, the dog, or your partner. You start moving through your home like you are handling a sacred artifact. I started practicing doing one thing at a time fully, with complete attention. I would slice a vegetable in silence, no music, no news. The sound of the knife hitting the wooden board was the only music. My nervous system dropped into a slower gear. I urge you to designate a silent hour in your home. Not reading time, not meditation time. Just a block of time where no artificial sound is generated. The creaks of the house, the distant hum of the world, these become the baseline. In that silence you hear your own breathing, and for many of us that is terrifying. But it's the only way to realize how loud your internal life has become. A final honest note. If absolute silence feels oppressive or triggers anxiety, start small. 5 minutes, sit with the quiet and let it settle. You might feel restless, bored, even agitated. That's the withdrawal from constant stimulation. Keep sitting. Over days, the restlessness fades and a calm spaciousness emerges. That's the object of silence arriving. Welcome it. Number 1. The art of living within the season. The ultimate Japanese rule for home peace is not a strict chore, but a form of sensitivity. We live in temperature-controlled bubbles. We eat strawberries in December and blast the AC in July. We detach from the natural world, and in doing so, we detach from the rhythm of time. Peace comes when the home acknowledges that time is passing beautifully. This isn't about decorating for the holidays in a tacky way. This is the subtle art of letting the home quietly follow the seasons. In a Japanese household, this might be changing the Norin curtain at the door to a lighter linen in the summer. It might be switching the incense. In spring, a fresh fleeting cherry blossom scent. In autumn, the dry, woody scent of fallen leaves. I spent 1 full year in a house near the Kamo River in Kyoto, and that year rewired my perception of time. The house was old, wooden, and drafty. It had no central heating and no air conditioning beyond a single wall unit in one room. In January, the cold was bone-deep in the mornings. We would wake up and see our breath. But rather than fight the cold, my host family embraced it. They had a kotatsu, a low table with an electric heater attached to the underside and a heavy quilt draped over it. We'd gather around the kotatsu, legs tucked under the quilt, and the heat would pool around our bodies while the rest of the room stayed cool. You'd feel the cold on your cheeks and the warmth on your feet, and that contrast was exquisite. You were aware of winter. You respected it. You didn't pretend it was July. In the evenings, my host mother would serve hot yuzu tea, the citrus scent sharp and bright in the cold air. The season was not an inconvenience to be bulldozed by climate control. It was a guest to be welcomed. By April, the kotatsu quilt was stored away, replaced by a light summer cloth. The Norin curtain at the kitchen doorway changed from a thick indigo cotton to a sheer, gauzy hemp that let the breeze flow through. In the tokonoma alcove, the winter scroll of snow-covered pines was swapped for a spring scroll of a single cherry blossom branch and a poem about impermanence. In June, during the rainy season, small glass bowls of water with floating gardenias appeared on the windowsills. A visual coolness. A tiny wind chime, a furin, hung from the eaves, and its faint, glassy ring signaled the presence of a breeze long before you felt it on your skin. The home was breathing with the year. It was alive. And I, who had lived for decades in sealed, beige apartments where nothing changed but the holiday decorations, felt my own internal clock start to resynchronize. My anxiety about the future, my regret about the past, began to soften. Time was not a linear march toward death. It was a circle. The winter would return. The cherry blossoms would bloom again. There was no rush. It's about thermal honesty. Before air conditioning, people cooled down by dangling wind chimes and looking at glass bowls of cool water. The Japanese approach is to feel the season, not fight it. In winter, you heat the person, not the room, using a kotatsu heated table. You gather around it. The house gets cold, but your core stays warm. You are aware of the winter, you respect it. You don't pretend it isn't happening. This eliminates the anxiety of total control. I now change the texture of my pillows with the seasons. Rough linen in the heat, soft brushed cotton in the cold. I put a small branch of red maple in a vase during October. It's a gentle alert that time is moving, and when time moves, your problems move too. The stagnation of depression is broken by the simple act of noticing that the leaves outside are turning, and bringing one of those leaves inside. You don't need a kotatsu. You need a sensitivity. Open your windows in the morning, even in winter, for just 5 minutes. Let the air change. Notice the quality of the light. Is it the harsh white of July or the slanting gold of November? Adjust your home to meet it. Pull out a warmer throw. Boil water for tea with cinnamon. Put a sprig of pine in a jar. These are not chores. They are acts of alignment. They tell your deepest self that you are not a cog in a machine. You are a creature of the earth, and the earth's rhythm is your rhythm. When you live in that alignment, a deep, ancient peace settles into your bones. This brings us to the closing bell. The Western home is typically a machine for high-efficiency living. It prioritizes output and storage. The Japanese home, stripped down to these 10 rules, is a machine for mental peace. It prioritizes emptiness over clutter, sensory softness over sensory assault, and ritual over convenience. The genius is that none of this requires a construction loan. You don't need shoji screens or a soaking tub to start. You just need to stop the violence. Remove your shoes like you mean it. Turn off the big light, wipe the sink. Give the scissors a home. Leave 20% of the shelf empty. These rules are a rebellion against the Western dogma that more is always the answer. Because deep, resonant peace is never found in more. It's hiding in the space between things. In the quiet gap. In the shadow, try it. Pick just one of these rules today, and watch your home transform from a source of anxiety into a sanctuary. It's not magic, it's habits, and the silence is waiting for you.